Welcome back, basketball fans. Today we have a truly exciting story that's been making waves in the WNBA. After years of trying to find their footing, the Indiana Fever have dropped one of the biggest bombshells in recent offseason memory. Not only have they signed major talents like Sophie Cunningham, Natasha Howard, DeWanna Bonner, and the one and only Sydney Colson, but they also have Caitlin Clark in the mix, arguably one of the most hyped prospects to enter the league in recent years. But here's the real kicker. We finally got to hear from one of their returning players, Lexie Hull, about how she feels regarding all these bold moves. Her response is candid, revealing, and signals a massive shift in the Fever's trajectory. In this episode, we're doing a deep dive into every angle, why these signings matter, what the so-called Caitlin Clark effect truly entails, and how the Fever's entire organizational identity is changing right before our eyes. Buckle up, because this is going to be a thorough look at one of the most intriguing transformations in the WNBA. Let's start by spelling out exactly what has happened in Indiana. For the longest time, the Fever have been known as a franchise stuck in a rebuilding phase. They've had talented young players, some of them even lottery picks, but they simply couldn't find that magical blend of star power, veteran leadership, and on-court chemistry to break through in a hyper-competitive WNBA. However, in a matter of a single offseason, everything changed. The Fever managed to pick up Sophie Cunningham, a sharpshooter and gritty wing who's proven she can knock down big shots and energize her teammates. They brought in Natasha Howard, who boasts a championship ring and an all-star pedigree, someone who can defend multiple positions and score both inside and out. Then came DeWanna Bonner, who arguably was one of the top free agents on the market, a prolific scorer, an experienced leader, and a two-time WNBA champion. This alone would have been considered a massive coup for any team. But the Fever didn't stop there. Finally, the Indiana front office confirmed the signing of Sydney Colson, a player whose stat lines might not always jump off the page, but whose presence, leadership qualities, and championship background with the Las Vegas Aces make her an invaluable locker room piece. When you list these names one after another, it reads like an all-star cast. It's such a stark departure from Indiana's roster just a season or two ago, which was young, still unproven, and in desperate need of guidance. This infusion of veterans isn't just for show, it's a statement of intent. The Fever are done being bottom feeders, done being overlooked. They want to contend, and the front office clearly believes they've assembled the right puzzle pieces to do so. What does it mean for the existing culture, though? And how does it impact the returning players who have battled through losses and adversity? That's where Lexie Hull comes into focus. She's been part of the Fever during the lean times. Hearing her perspective is crucial for understanding how the team itself is internalizing this huge pivot. Now, let's move on to Lexie Hull, one of the returning players who's lived through the frustrations and challenges of wearing a Fever jersey in a period of growing pains. When the news broke that Sophie Cunningham, Natasha Howard, DeWanna Bonner, and Sydney Colson were all joining the squad, it was almost impossible not to wonder how returning players would react. After all, these additions can shake up rotations, redistribute minutes, and alter team roles drastically. In an interview, Hull struck a fascinating balance of excitement and realization. She spoke about the seriousness and intensity that these new signings bring, especially with players who have actually won championships. For a player like Hull, who's been fighting to establish herself, this also means a chance to learn from the best. There is, however, an undercurrent of pressure. The stakes are higher now. The team is no longer content to improve step by step. They want to compete now. Hull highlighted the sense of still sinking in when describing the new roster. That phrase alone suggests an awareness that this season won't just be another year of incremental growth. Instead, it's like stepping onto a moving train that's already speeding toward a destination, legitimate contention. For Hull and other returnees, it's sink or swim. She didn't mince words about feeling the challenge, but her tone suggests she's not afraid of the competition. In fact, she seems invigorated by the idea that she'll be playing alongside proven winners. For fans, Hull's reaction is particularly meaningful. It sends a message that the veterans and new stars are being embraced, not resented. If a franchise staple like Hull felt sidelined or overshadowed, it could lead to locker room tensions that sometimes sabotage super teams before they even get off the ground. Instead, her stance is positive and welcoming. and that bodes well for the team's chemistry moving forward. It's impossible to discuss the Indiana Fever's sudden rise without mentioning the Caitlin Clark effect. While she hasn't even set foot on a WNBA court in a regular season game yet, depending on exact timeline or drafts, the hype around her is monumental. Clark is widely celebrated for her scoring prowess, court vision, and that intangible star quality that can shift the entire vibe of a franchise. She's been labeled a generational talent, and for good reason. Her college performances were often mesmerizing, leading to record-breaking stat lines and viral highlight reels. But how does one player influence a franchise so profoundly before even playing professionally? Simply put, star power matters, especially in a league like the WNBA, where endorsement deals, fan interest, and team investment can surge with the presence of a marquee name. Prospective free agents also pay attention to these developments. If you're a veteran like DeWanna Bonner, you might think, could my scoring and leadership flourish alongside an elite guard who draws defensive attention all over the floor? The answer is most definitely yes. And if you're Sophie Cunningham, you might be eager to join a squad where the passing wizardry of Clark can set you up for open threes or backdoor cuts. The Clark effect goes beyond on-court performance. It translates to media coverage, game attendance, and national conversations about the Fever. When a team is thrust into the spotlight, it becomes a lot more enticing for big-name players to sign on. The ability to compete for championships is paramount, but players also consider brand-building opportunities, fan engagement, and a sense of being part of something truly special. Indiana, historically overlooked in the WNBA landscape in recent years, suddenly looks like the place to be, largely due to Clark's potential to revolutionize how the team plays and how often it appears in primetime matchups. In essence, the Fever have capitalized on the synergy between a young superstar and the hunger of established vets looking for a new challenge. That synergy is precisely what the Caitlin Clark effect is all about. It's part hype, part basketball strategy, and part cultural momentum. The Fever are harnessing it to the fullest, sending a message to the rest of the league. Indiana is no longer a rebuilding afterthought. It's a genuine contender in the making. Moving from the excitement around Caitlin Clark, let's examine the seasoned veterans who are now donning Indiana jerseys. Many WNBA fans have pointed out that if there was one major deficiency in last year's Fever squad, it was the lack of proven championship experience. Sure, they had players with potential and flashes of brilliance, but in crunch time, experience often trumps everything else. DeWanna Bonner is the epitome of playoff savvy. As a two-time champion, her resume speaks volumes. She knows what it takes to step up in big games, how to navigate a playoff series, and how to handle the mental grind of a championship run. She brings not just scoring, though her scoring is prolific, but leadership, mentorship, and a certain poise that can uplift an entire locker room. Meanwhile, Natasha Howard is another WNBA champion who can dominate on both ends of the floor. She's explosive, versatile, and, importantly, is known for her defensive prowess. In a league where high-powered offenses can rack up points in a hurry, having Howard's two-way capabilities is crucial. For younger forwards on the team, this is a golden opportunity to learn from one of the best post defenders and inside scorers around. Then there's Sophie Cunningham, who injects a blend of shooting and attitude. She's fearless, never backs down from a challenge, and has a knack for drilling timely shots that shift momentum. Every championship-level team needs a spark plug, someone who raises the collective intensity and can swing a game's tide with a single three-pointer or a hustle play. Cunningham fits that role perfectly. Together, these veterans shift the Fever from a hopeful young squad to a group with a real chance of making noise in the playoffs. And they don't just bring skill, they bring credibility. Younger players who might have been on the fence about committing fully to the Fever's system can now look at Bonner, Howard, and Cunningham for guidance, realizing these are players who've been there and done that. The WNBA only allows a limited number of roster spots, 144 in total if every team carries 12 players. This means competition for minutes is fierce, even under normal circumstances. When you add in multiple All-Stars, champions, and high-profile signings, that competition reaches a whole new level. For Lexie Hull and the other returning players, this scenario creates a dual reality. On one hand, the chance to finally compete alongside winners is thrilling. On the other hand, it means proving your value to the team all over again. Last season, you might have been a key cog in the rotation simply because the team needed all the help it could get. Now, with an influx of veteran talent, the bar is raised. Practice intensity typically skyrockets when the stakes are higher. Players who once coasted on guaranteed minutes realize that every possession in practice is a chance to impress the coaching staff and maintain or elevate their role. For someone like Hull, who's built her reputation on work ethic and steady improvement, this could be the perfect environment to accelerate her growth. But there's also a psychological element. If you're not mentally prepared for the competition, it's easy to become discouraged by new signings who might overshadow you. However, from Hull's interviews, she doesn't seem discouraged in the slightest. If anything, she's using this wave of talent as added motivation. When she talks about how the new signings bring a championship mentality, she's indicating her eagerness to learn, adapt, and rise to the occasion. The best part is that she doesn't sound threatened. She sounds determined. That kind of mindset is vital for a team intending to climb to the top of the WNBA ladder. While it's easy to gravitate toward names like Bonner, Howard, and Cunningham, players who regularly fill the stat sheets, one signing that shouldn't be overlooked is Sydney Colson. Colson is, in many ways, a quintessential glue player. She might not average 15-plus points per game or amass triple-doubles, but she does the intangible work that rounds out a championship team. When you look at her tenure with the Las Vegas Aces, a squad that captured the 2022 WNBA title, you'll see how Colson's leadership style contributed to the team's locker room chemistry. She brings levity, humor, and camaraderie, but also knows when it's time to get serious. On the court, Colson is a pass-first point guard who values ball movement, defensive intensity, and smart decision-making. When you've got a budding superstar like Caitlin Clark, and you need a steady hand to facilitate or run the second unit, Colson is a stellar option. She can seamlessly maintain the tempo, keep younger players focused, and lock in defensively against opposing guards. But let's not forget, the WNBA is a league where veterans often become mentors. Colson's experience in big games, particularly in the playoffs, can be invaluable. She knows the emotional highs and lows that come with a title chase. This perspective is crucial for the Fever's rookies and younger players who might be stepping into pressure situations for the first time. If a game's momentum starts to slip away, Colson is one of those calming forces who can gather the team, direct traffic, and say, "We've got this. Let's regroup and execute." Her addition underscores Indiana's overarching strategy. They're not just gathering random talent. They're carefully picking players who align with a championship blueprint. Colson exemplifies how the Fever are emphasizing culture, experience, and mentorship as much as raw stats. When you look at these acquisitions collectively, a clear pattern emerges. The Fever front office isn't merely grabbing whoever is available. They're targeting specific types of players. They want proven champions, high-character individuals, and personalities that mesh well with a new, winning culture. This strategy is reminiscent of some of the most successful front offices in pro sports. Teams that don't just accumulate talent, but carefully curate a roster that balances star power, role players, and leadership. One critical aspect of this blueprint is ensuring that the older, established players genuinely want to be in Indiana. In the past, some star players might have scoffed at the idea of joining the Fever, given the franchise's recent struggles. Yet, with Caitlin Clark's arrival, plus the acquisitions of other marquee talents, the perception has shifted. When DeWanna Bonner or Natasha Howard sign on, that signals to the rest of the league that Indiana is a place where top talent can flourish and potentially compete for a title in the near future. This blueprint also includes the development of younger assets. It's not just about overshadowing the younger core with star power, it's about integrating them in a way that fosters growth. If you're a young forward learning under Natasha Howard, you're naturally going to level up your defense and scoring instincts. If you're a raw shooter, Sophie Cunningham's presence can help refine your perimeter game and mental toughness. And if you're a young guard, or even Caitlin Clark herself, having someone like Sydney Colson in the locker room can deepen your situational understanding and help you remain steady in crucial moments. Ultimately, this approach requires a patient yet determined mindset from coaches, players, and executives. While fans want instant success, the front office understands that building a perennial contender is a careful dance, balancing short-term ambitions with long-term stability. By bringing in these veterans and focusing on synergy with their young star, the Fever are setting themselves up for sustained success rather than a single playoff run. Together, these pieces create a formidable puzzle, but the final image is yet to be formed. Can the Fever's coaching staff harness these talents into a cohesive unit? Will the new signings and returning players find common ground quickly enough to make a deep playoff run? Are we witnessing the start of a WNBA powerhouse? Or will the hype outpace the on-court chemistry? These are the questions that make the upcoming season so intriguing. One thing is certain: the WNBA has never been more competitive or more stacked with teams willing to take big swings in free agency and the draft. If the Fever can weather early season learning curves and maintain focus, they could become one of the league's most compelling stories, pushing for a top playoff seed and beyond. But now, it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think this massive overhaul was the perfect move for Indiana? Or is there a concern that adding so many big names at once could backfire without enough time to blend? And what about Lexie Hull's position? Will she thrive under this new spotlight or struggle to find her niche? We want to hear from you in the comments section. If you found this deep dive helpful and want to stay in the loop with all things WNBA, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss any updates or analysis on your favorite teams and players. From the Caitlin Clark phenomenon to the next wave of free agency news, we've got you covered. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Keep your eyes on the Indiana Fever this season. It's shaping up to be one of the biggest transformations we've seen in recent WNBA history,